The last thing I remember clearly is watching the whole room start to spin. The white walls of that bathroom tilting one way and then the other. The floor coming up fast to meet me. And then nothing. Just nothing. And then something else entirely. Something I have spent the last 40 years of my life trying to find the right words for. And I'm still not sure I have them. But I'll try. I always try. Because I feel like I owe it to people to try. I grew up in Fort Worth, Texas. My dad was a military man, through and through. Spent time in the Army before I was born, and he brought every bit of that discipline home with him. He wasn't a cruel man. I don't think he meant to be, but he was hard, especially on me, the oldest boy. There was a standard in that house, and if you didn't meet it, you heard about it, and sometimes you felt it too. That kind of thing, when it gets into a young boy, it festers. It follows you. I channeled all of that in the fighting for a long time, looking for any excuse to throw a punch, to prove something to somebody. Eventually, a friend of mine got me into bodybuilding. I was in my mid-20s, and something about it clicked. The discipline, the way your body responded if you put the work in. You could see the results, and nobody could take that away from you. Me and my buddy Tommy were serious about it. 2-a-day workouts every single day. We were using the popular recovery supplements back then, and the one everyone wanted was almost impossible to find. There was a 6-month waiting list. So we did what impatient young men do. We found a company overseas that had it in stock and placed an order. What we didn't know was that what the stores sold here in the States was a 5% concentration of that supplement. What we ordered was 100%. We were taking 20 times the intended dose in one shot. Within minutes, we both felt wrong, sick, dizzy in a way that wasn't ordinary dizziness. More like the ground underneath us had become unreliable. Tommy started losing consciousness at the wheel. I was shaking awake, and we pulled into a Dairy Queen parking lot. I went straight inside and headed to the bathroom. My legs felt strange. My heart felt strange. That supplement at that concentration acts like a sedative. It was putting my body to sleep from the inside out. The last thing I saw was the room spinning. Then I went down, hard, onto that tile floor. And what my body did next, trying to protect itself, trying to inject the toxin, made everything worse. I aspirated, breathed it into my lungs, and that was the moment my heart slowed and slowed and stopped. What I'm about to tell you does not fit neatly into any box I had for the world before that day. I was raised Christian. I believed in God, in heaven, in the idea of the soul continuing on. But believing in something in the abstract and then actually living it, those are two entirely different things. The first thing I noticed was the dark. But it wasn't a frightening dark. It was more like being submerged in still water, cool and quiet. And there was this immediate peace that I had never felt in my waking life, not once. And then, through that darkness, something began to come into focus. A scene, a room. And I was watching it from above, looking down the way you'd look down from a balcony. I could see a man lying on the floor of a bathroom. The tiles, the stall doors, everything. I remember thinking, calmly, that this was an unusual angle for a film. I genuinely believed I was watching something. A movie maybe. A show. I even found it interesting from a creative standpoint, shooting from above rather than eye level. I watched a customer find the bathroom door locked. I watched him eventually go get the manager. And I could hear, I know how this sounds, I could hear the thoughts of every person in that restaurant. Not read their faces, not guess, hear, as clearly as if they were speaking aloud. The anxiety of the manager, the confusion of the crowd, all of it broadcast right to me. 3 paramedics arrived, and somehow I knew, without being told, that the third one was brand new, first week on the job. I could feel the greenness on him, and his thoughts came through loudest. They worked on the body on the floor. They did compressions. Then they stopped, pronounced it dead on arrival, zipped it into a yellow bag, loaded it into the ambulance. And still I'm watching all of this from above, completely calm, fascinated. It wasn't until they were in the ambulance that something changed. That young medic was tearing himself up inside, feeling like they'd given up too soon. As those thoughts intensified, I saw a light begin to glow in his chest, brighten and brighten until it blazed. And then I heard a voice, not his, something else, clear and absolute. It said, "This one's not dead." That young man opened the bag, didn't feel a pulse, didn't have a protocol-approved reason to continue, but he broke protocol anyway. Forced oxygen into the lungs, hooked up the defibrillator. First shock, nothing. Second shock, 1 heartbeat. Just 1. The other 2 medics snapped to life. They radioed ahead, transferred the body to the hospital, and I watched it happen from above. Then one of the nurses strapped the left arm down, and I felt it. I felt the strap on my arm. Everything cracked open in that moment. That was my body. That was my death. I've been watching my own death like it was entertainment, calm and detached. And it didn't land until one strap on one arm connected the seam below to the being watching it from above. Then came the review. Everything I had ever done that was selfish, that was hurtful, that left a mark on someone else. I saw it all. Not just from my own eyes, from the eyes of every person I had affected. I felt what they felt. Every harsh word, every fight I'd picked, every time my anger had made someone smaller. It was not pleasant. I felt a heaviness beginning to gather around me, like a fog, like something dark starting to close in. And then the warmth came. It started at my back, like the sun coming out from behind a cloud and pouring directly through you. As it spread through my whole being, it brought with it the most complete feeling of peace and love I have ever known. A love that was total, that saw everything I was and didn't flinch. As I turned to find the source, I began to see the other side of the review, all the good I had done. There was more of it than I expected. Moments I'd forgotten. Times I hadn't known I was making a difference, but was. All of it there, luminous and real. I turned fully around, and there was a man standing there, a presence, calm and warm and enormous, in a way that had nothing to do with size. My first thought, coming from a Christian background, not knowing what else to reach for, was, "You must be God." And without moving his mouth, he answered me. He said, "No, son, I'm not God. I'm your guide." His name, he explained, was Drake. What followed I have turned over in my mind more times than I can count. Drake took me on a journey, not through any geography I can name, but through understanding. He showed me the masks I've been wearing my whole life, the face I put on for my father, for my friends, for strangers, all slightly different, none of them fully me. He told me that until I could find the authentic person underneath all those layers, I couldn't grow toward where we were going. And I knew he was right. I'd never once simply been myself. He told me that Earth is not a courtroom. I had spent my entire life assuming, without quite putting it into words, that life was a place where you came to be judged, classified, and either kept or cast away. Drake said no. He said Earth is a school. It has always only ever been a school, a place to come and learn how to build with your thoughts and your love, to grow the kind of soul that can return to where it came from. That idea that I wasn't being graded, that the whole purpose was learning, felt like putting down a weight I didn't know I'd been carrying my whole life. We moved through what I can only describe as layers, like cutting through resistance that gave way slowly and then all at once. And ahead of us, I began to see something that looked like a sun, enormous, 1,000,000 times larger than anything I had seen. Surrounding it was a wide band of spheres, orbs, opalescent and glowing from the inside. Drake let me look inside one of them. I saw a man from long ago, dressed in early 20th century clothes, holding hard to his anger, reliving a betrayal over and over. Then something shifted in him. He looked around, seemed to realize where he was, and presences gathered around him. The only word I have for what they look like is angels, and escorted him inward. That was the gate, not a wall to keep anyone out, a threshold to help you let go of the last things dragging you down before you crossed over. And then we crossed over. I touched down on grass. I know how that sounds, but I touched down on grass, and when my feet met it, there was a connection, like something long broken to me was repaired. The grass had a smell, a taste, a sound rising from it like quiet music. Light came from everything, not from any sun above, but from within. The trees, the water in the distance, the mountains, the flowers, all of it lit from inside itself. And I understood that the consciousness I could feel in that grass, that presence running through everything, was God. Not above it all, in all of it. Drake stood beside me and said, "This is going to be hard, coming back." He hugged me, and I want you to understand that a hug there is nothing like what we do here. Here, we're imitating something. There, two energies truly merge and become something greater than either one was alone. I felt more whole in that moment than I'd ever felt in 70-some years of living. And then I heard my brother's voice, praying over my body. I was in that place. I knew where I was, and I could hear him as clearly as if he were in the room with me, praying in my hospital bedside, 3 days after I'd been declared brain dead. And in that prayer was so much love. Love for me, yes, but also love for our mother and what losing me would do to her. And that love reached through whatever distance lay between us and pulled me back. Not with force, just with weight. The weight of being needed. I woke up in that hospital room like a man breaking surface after nearly drowning. Claustrophobia hit me immediately. All those tubes and wires and machines connected to me. I couldn't bear it. I pulled everything off, unplugged what I could, yanked out what I couldn't. I found hospital gowns in the cabinet, wrapped them around myself, and walked for the elevator before 2 nurses came running. I signed more paperwork than I care to remember, and my father picked me up at 7:30 in the morning. And then came the hardest part of this whole story. Coming back was the most difficult thing I have ever survived. Dying, once I stopped fighting it, was peace, pure peace. Coming back to a world that felt dim and heavy and closed in, that was the real suffering. I went through a period where I thought seriously about not staying, but I had seen enough to know that wasn't the path, that there was something I came back to do, and that I needed to hold on long enough to find it. My final confirmation that none of what I experienced was a dream came from my wife, Andrea. The first time I met her, I could see something in her eyes, a sliver of that light, that warmth, the same quality I had felt in that other place. She was the first person I had ever looked at and recognized. The month before our wedding, we were at a historical presentation in a small town in Wyoming, watching a slideshow of the town's early founders. One of the slides stopped me cold. The face on the screen was the face of Drake, my guide. There, underneath the photograph, was the name Charles Kaiser. I called my grandmother that same night, asked her to tell me about Charles Kaiser. And she smiled the way you smile about someone you love and said, "Oh, you mean Great-Grandpa Drake? He's pretty famous in our family." His middle name was Drake. That's what everyone who loved him called him. He'd been a surveyor, a clergyman, a foundational man in that community. A man who had apparently been watching over our family long after his time here was finished. That confirmation quieted the last piece of me that has still wondered whether I had simply been oxygen deprived and confused. And I have spent the decades since trying to live by what I was shown, that love is not a sentiment. It is the fundamental energy of everything that exists. That what we put into the world, beginning with our thoughts, comes back to us. That the interactions you have with the people passing through your days, your neighbors, the strangers, your own family on a hard day, those moments are the entire point. Not your career, not your list of accomplishments, how you treated people, whether you added to their light or drew from it. That's what gets reviewed. I'm an old man now, and I've had time to let all this settle into my bones. What I can tell you from this side of a long life is that the fear we carry about death is a weight we were never meant to carry. What I found on the other side of it was home. More home than anything I had felt in all my years of living. The real work, the hard part, that requires every bit of what you've got, is right here. In the choices you make today about who you're going to be to the people standing in front of you. That's the whole thing. And I can tell you, with everything I have, that it is worth every bit of the effort.